The Galactic Council Hall was filled with laughter. Representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy sat in their golden seats, their expressions smug, their voices dripping with amusement. At the center of the grand chamber stood Ambassador Reynolds, the human representative. His face was calm, but his fists were clenched at his sides. He had expected resistance. He had even expected insults. But this was something else. The mockery. "You Deathworlders are always so dramatic," said Chancellor Vokthal of the Teltar Dominion, his scaled face twisted in a mocking grin. "A few colonies lost, and suddenly you expect us to care." The other representatives chuckled. The laughter echoed through the hall. Reynolds' jaw tightened. A few colonies lost. No, it had been 6 planets. Over 80 million human lives, wiped out by the Drexer marauders, a warrior species known for their brutality. The attack had been unprovoked. There had been no warning, just destruction. And now, the Council, the so-called protectors of the galaxy, sat here laughing. The plea for justice. Reynolds took a deep breath. Humanity is not asking for war. We are asking for justice. If the Galactic Council refuses to act, then what? Interrupted General Karish of the Thalzar Imperium, leaning forward with a sneer. You humans will do what? Complain. File another report. Laughter erupted again. Reynolds remained silent, his expression unreadable. But inside, a storm was brewing. The unseen threat. One species did not laugh. The Velkari, a race of traders who had dealt with humans for decades, sat quietly in their section. Their leader, High Merchant Dren, watched the scene unfold with wary eyes. Unlike the others, the Velkari knew something the rest of the council did not. Humans had limits. They were patient. They were diplomatic. But if you pushed them too far, they did not forgive. The council's final mistake. Chancellor Vokthal smirked. Humans have no power here. You are nothing but a minor species. This is not your war. Reynolds looked up. His voice was calm, but his words sent a chill through the room. Then perhaps it's time we make it our war. The laughter stopped. For the first time, the council felt uneasy. But still, they did not take the threat seriously. They did not understand what they had just done. They had crossed the line. And now, humanity would show them why that was a mistake. The message was simple. A single transmission sent to every major power in the galaxy. No threats, no demands, just a warning. It came from Earth, and it carried only 4 words. Do not test us. The Council's reaction. The Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. The air was thick with tension. The humans dare threaten us. Chancellor Vokthal growled, his sharp teeth bared. What are they going to do? Their fleet is weak. Their technology is barely above primitive. General Karish of the Thalzar Imperium scoffed. Let them rage. Let them scream. We have nothing to fear. But not everyone was so certain. High Merchant Dren of the Velkari sat in silence, his fingers tapping anxiously. He had seen something the others had not. The humans had stopped negotiating. And that meant only one thing. The Drexer's fatal mistake. While the council laughed, the Drexer marauders prepared for another raid. Their leader, Overlord Garrick, saw humanity's weakness as an opportunity. They cower behind words, he sneered. Let us show them true strength. His fleet, 5 massive dreadnoughts, 30 cruisers, and hundreds of raider ships, set course for another human colony. This time, there would be no survivors. Or so they thought. The silent response. As the Drexer fleet approached New Avalon, the largest human colony in the outer systems, they expected panic. Instead, they found silence. No distress signals. No fleeing civilians. Just a single human warship waiting for them. A ship unlike anything they had ever seen. Sleek, black, almost invisible against the void. No identification markings. no transmission, just watching. And then, without warning, it disappeared. Not into hyperspace, not through conventional cloaking. It just vanished. Overlord Garrick scoffed. A trick, nothing more. He was wrong. The first casualty. Minutes later, his fleet's rearmost destroyer exploded. No alarms, no warnings, just gone. Then another, and another. Panic set in. "Where is the enemy?" Garrick roared. His crew scrambled for answers. Their scanners showed nothing. And then a voice, calm, cold, and human, whispered through the comms. "We warned you." The transmission cut, and the slaughter began. Overlord Garrick's flagship, the Bloodfang, was in chaos. The once mighty Drexer fleet was being torn apart. One by one, his ships vanished from the tactical map, not disabled, not retreating, but completely wiped out with terrifying precision. Yet, their scanners detected nothing. No ships, no missiles, no energy signatures. It was as if death itself had come for them. The Ghost Fleet. "We ere they," Garrick roared, his claws digging into the armrests of his command throne. His officers scrambled, trying to find an enemy that didn't exist. Then, suddenly, a whisper. Not over comms, not from his crew, but directly inside his ship's systems. "We told you not to test us." And then the lights flickered. For the first time in his life, Garrick felt fear. The unseen executioners. On the edge of the battlefield, hidden in the void, the true power of humanity was finally unleashed. The SV Revenant, one of Earth's newest stealth warships, watched silently as its eye-controlled fleet ripped the Drexer apart. These weren't traditional human ships. They weren't bulky, slow-moving cruisers like the Galactic Council believed. These were Predator-class warships designed to hunt. Adaptive cloaking made them invisible. Quantum jamming blinded enemy sensors. Eye-targeting systems calculated perfect shots before the enemy even realized they were under attack. The Drexer fleet was fighting ghosts, and they were losing. The moment of desperation. Garrick's fleet, once 30 ships strong, was now down to 5. His warriors were terrified. The Drexer, who prided themselves on their brutality, had never known what it was like to be hunted. And now, they were prey. "Re-to-re-ye," Garrick snarled, slamming his fist onto the control panel. The remaining Drexer ships turned, their engines burning white-hot as they tried to flee. For a moment, it seemed they might escape. Then the human transmission came through. "You don't get to run." And then, one by one, the remaining Drexer ships vanished in silent explosions. A message to the galaxy. Back at the Galactic Council, reports of the battle arrived within hours. There were no survivors. The entire Drexer invasion fleet had been annihilated. And the only message left behind was a simple one. This was our mercy. The Galactic Council was in chaos. The destruction of the Drexer Marauder fleet had sent shockwaves through the universe. No one had expected this outcome. No warnings, no survivors. Just silence. The same Drexar who had terrorized countless worlds, who had razed entire civilizations to the ground, had been wiped out overnight. And the scariest part, no one knew how. The fear sets in. Chancellor Vokthal of the Exceltar Dominion sat rigid in his chair, his scaled fingers drumming nervously against the council table. This must be a mistake," he muttered, eyes scanning the reports. "The Drexar must have provoked another species. The humans don't have this kind of power." But the room was silent. For the first time, no one laughed at humanity. The Velkari ambassador, High Merchant Dren, was the first to speak. "You all refused to listen," he said, voice low. "You mocked them, ignored them. And now, you've awoken something you can't control." He turned to the council. "And tell me, if the Drexer, one of the strongest war fleets in the galaxy, could be destroyed so easily, What do you think will happen if humans decide they have more enemies? A cold silence followed. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council felt true fear. Humanity's next move. Back on Earth, Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Command stood before a holographic war map, his arms crossed. "Status update," he asked. "Phase 1 was a success," replied Commander Vasquez. "The Drexer fleet was eliminated in under an hour. No human casualties, no enemy survivors." "Good," Kane nodded. "And the Council?" "They're panicking." Vasquez smirked. "They know we're not the weaklings they thought we were." "That's not enough," Kane said. He turned to his officers, his expression unreadable. "It's time for Phase 2. Commander Vasquez hesitated. "Are you sure, sir? We've made our point." Kane's voice was calm, but absolute. "The galaxy laughed when our people were slaughtered. They ignored our warnings. They let the Drexar wipe out our colonies without lifting a finger." He turned to the hologram of the Galactic Council's headquarters. "Now we make sure they never ignore us again." The Council's last mistake. Despite their fear, the Council refused to act. "Humans are still a minor species," Chancellor Vochthal argued. "One battle doesn't change that. If we show weakness now, they will think they can challenge our authority." "We must remind them of their place," General Karish added. A decision was made. The Council would send a warning to Earth, a final demand for them to stand down. But humanity was done listening. The moment the message left the Council's transmission hub, the lights flickered. The transmission screens glitched, and a voice, cold, mechanical, and unmistakably human, spoke through the chamber. "We warned you." The Council members froze. A second later, their entire security network crashed. A third second later, every Council-controlled warship in orbit shut down. Then the skies above the Council's homeworld turned dark. The humans had arrived. And this time, there would be no mercy. The skies over Velthar Prime, home of the Galactic Council, were burning. The humans had arrived. And the universe would never forget this day. The silent invasion. The Council's defense grid shut down in an instant. Every planetary shield, every orbital gun, every warship in the system, dead. No alarms had sounded. No distress calls had been sent. One moment, Velthar Prime was the untouchable heart of the galaxy. The next, it was wide open to the wrath of a species the Council had mocked for centuries. Inside the Council chambers, panic erupted. "We're blind," a Xeltar officer screamed, his claws flying over a dead control panel. "Our fleets won't respond." What did they do to us?" Chancellor Vochtal's heart pounded in his chest. He turned to his aides, voice shaking. "Somebody, call the..." Then the lights flickered. A second later, the massive holographic screens lining the Council chamber turned black, and a single message appeared. "Surrender." The humans had hacked their world. And they weren't even hiding it. The storm breaks. From orbit, the SV Revenant, humanity's flagship, hovered like a phantom above Velthar Prime. On its bridge, Admiral Kane stood motionless, watching the helpless planet below. "They have 10 minutes, he said calmly. "If they refuse to surrender, we begin orbital strikes." His officers did not question him. Humanity's patience had run out. A fool's defiance. Back in the Council chamber, Chancellor Vochthal refused to believe it. "This is an outrage," he bellowed, his voice filled with fury and fear. "We are the rulers of the galaxy. We will not be threatened by a bunch of primitive..." Boom. The entire Council chamber trembled. Outside, the sky lit up as the first human strike hit the Velthar Defense HQ. A single shot. From orbit. Precision. No civilians harmed. Just a message. The Council sat in stunned silence. For the first time in history, they were the ones being hunted. And humanity was watching. The final choice. Chancellor Vochthal turned to the Velkari ambassador, High Merchant Dren. Dren had warned them. And now, Dren was the only one not panicking. "What do we do?" Vokthal whispered, his voice hollow. Dren exhaled slowly. "You listen," he said, "and you pray they let us live." With a shaking claw, the Chancellor pressed the comms panel. The message was short. "We surrender." The Galactic Council had surrendered. The humans had won. But peace, that was never an option. The seeds of hatred, the surrender of Velfar Prime, shattered the illusion of galactic unity. For centuries, the great empires had treated humanity as a minor species, nothing more than an afterthought. But now, the mighty Galactic Council, rulers of thousands of worlds, had fallen without a fight. And not everyone accepted that. From the shadows, whispers of rebellion began to spread. The Drakar's revenge. Deep in the uncharted void, a war council assembled. The Drakar Dominion, the second most powerful empire in the galaxy, had refused to answer the council's distress calls. Now, Supreme Warlord Kavor sat upon his throne, his eyes glowing with fury. "We were right to wait," he growled. The council was weak. They begged humans for peace, and they paid the price. His generals murmured in agreement. But humans... Kavor's claws tightened around his armrest. "They have shown their true nature. They are not peaceful. They are not weak." A dark smile crossed his face. "But they are few." He rose, his voice thundering through the chamber. The council surrendered. He spat the word like a curse. "But the Dominion does not kneel." He turned to his fleet commanders. "Prepare the fleets. We will not make the same mistake as the Drexar. We will crush the humans before they can grow any stronger." The war horns of the Drakar Dominion echoed through the void. The rebellion had begun. A fragile victory. On Earth, Admiral Kane stood before the massive holomap of the galaxy. The Council's surrender had been swift. Too swift. "This isn't over," he muttered. Commander Vasquez frowned. "Sir, we took Velfar Prime without firing a real shot. The Council won't dare oppose us again." Kane exhaled, shaking his head. "It's not the Council I'm worried about," he said. He turned to the map, tapping a sector in deep space. "The Drakar are watching." Vasquez's expression darkened. "You think they'll attack?" Kane's eyes were cold. "I think," he said, "they're already preparing for war." He turned to his officers. "Send out the recon fleets. We need intel." He paused for a moment. Then, in a lower voice, he added, "And prepare the Doomsday Protocol." Vasquez's breath caught. "Sir, do it. Because if humanity had learned anything from history, it was this. Winning the first battle doesn't mean you survive the war." The war had begun. The Drakar Dominion had made their move. And humanity. They were ready. The first strike. It started with a whisper. A single human outpost. Station Echo 9. Went dark. No distress call. No last transmission. Just silence. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the SV Revenant, staring at the dead star system, where Echo 9 had once been. "They wanted us to see this," he said grimly. Commander Vasquez exhaled sharply. "The Drakar." Kane nodded. "No one else has the firepower to wipe out a station that fast." Vasquez clenched her fists. "Orders." Kane's jaw tightened. "They think this is fear tactics," he said. "They think we'll hesitate." He turned to his officers. "Activate extinction protocol." Silence fell over the bridge. No one spoke, because they all knew what that meant. Humanity had been merciful once. Not anymore. The wrath of Earth. The Drakar Armada descended on the core worlds, expecting another easy conquest. They were wrong, because when they arrived, the humans were already waiting. Stealth fleets, planetary cannons, AI-driven warships that didn't need rest. The Drakar never stood a chance. Within hours, the first wave of invaders was eradicated. Not pushed back. Destroyed. Across the battlefield, human ships broadcast the same message. You wanted war. Now you have it. The final stand. In the heart of the Drakkar Dominion, Supreme Warlord Kavor watched in horror as fleet after fleet was wiped from existence. "This is impossible," he growled. "They were supposed to be weak." An aide trembled beside him. "The reports say they had this planned. They were waiting for us." Kavor's blood ran cold. The humans had anticipated the war, and they had built their entire military around ending it. A final message flashed across the war room's holoscreen. A transmission. From Earth. Admiral Kane's face appeared, his expression like cold steel. "You should have listened," he said. Then, without another word, he sent the final order. Fire. The end of the Drakkar. A single weapon, years in the making, fired from the depths of Sol's outer colonies. A weapon the galaxy had never seen before. It moved faster than light, hit harder than any starship fleet. The Drakkar homeworld never stood a chance. The planet, once the beating heart of a warrior empire, was reduced to dust. Kavor's last thoughts were not of rage, not of revenge, but of regret. He had awakened the only monster in the galaxy more ruthless than his own people. Humanity. Epilogue. A new order. The war was over. The Drakkar Dominion was gone. And the message was clear. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the rulers of the stars. The other great empires, once so eager to challenge Earth, bowed in silence. Because now, they knew the truth. You do not threaten humanity. Not unless you want to be forgotten. Forever. Final words for the audience. This marks the end of the story, but the beginning of a new galactic era. One where humanity no longer asks for respect. They take it. Would you challenge them? Or would you kneel?